So even before we found out that Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, was lying on his CV, I still thought that even with his bumped up CV with lies, that he was not qualified for the job. So Jonathan Reynolds, he claimed that he spent some time as a solicitor, and then aside from that has spent most of his time in politics. But there's not even really anyone else in the cabinet, unless you count Timpson, who's not actually an MP, who's dealing with the prisons. These are pretty much, it's a group of people who pretty much has just lived off the public purse for the vast majority of their careers. There is not really any entrepreneurial experience whatsoever in that cabinet, and I feel like that really has shown in the budget. It seems to me that Rachel Reeves was somewhat surprised when her, what we told was going to be a budget for growth, ended up resulting in a millionaire leaving the country every 45 minutes, businesses up in arms saying they're going to have to cut their staff numbers and potentially close down. It seemed like she was surprised that this budget was not going to grow the economy. It seems like these people thought that you can tax your way to growth. It was very clear that there really aren't any business minds in the cabinet. But then we find out that not only did Rachel Reeves lie about her already limited experience on her CV, on her LinkedIn CV, but that Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, was at it as well. So he's now been told by the Solicitors Watchdog that he needs to stop lying. And it was Guido did a very good job of uncovering what was going on this. And it wasn't, you'll see here the edit to his LinkedIn, it wasn't just his LinkedIn where he lied, it was in many different places. So he claimed that he was a trainee solicitor and then an actual solicitor at the firm Adelshaw Goddard. That has now conveniently been edited and the solicitor part has disappeared. But it wasn't just on LinkedIn that he made this slip up. A lot of people said that people were too harsh on Rachel Reeves because it was, it's just a little mistake on LinkedIn. But he had it on his personal website. He had it there were multiple newspapers that had articles on him saying that he was a solicitor, and now you might say that's the journalist's fault, but he probably would have A, spoken to them for those articles, and B, would have had the ability to contact them to ask them to correct their mistake if they had got his previous job titles wrong, but he chose not to do so. And it's against the Solicitors Convention, whatever law, can't remember the exact name of it, to claim that you're a solicitor when you are not actually qualified and on the register for it. He said he made a spoken contribution in Parliament where he claimed that he was a solicitor. So this was just not, it wasn't just one little slip up. And I mean, Elliott, do you think that this makes you lose trust in this Labour government, seeing that another one of them is a liar, or do you think that this is just another silly old sleaze story that only really matters in the Westminster bubble and doesn't really affect normal voters?
I mean, it is just another story for them. I mean, every week there's a story, right? But this is quite a big one. I mean, lying on your CV for a job like that, especially. I mean, look, if we went to a job interview in any job, at any level, any pay level, and you lied and they found out about that, you'd be instantly dismissed, right?
Yep.
So why is he still there? And why did he even get the job? Why was it not verified in the first place as well, by the way? By, through his whole career in politics, up to being, the position he's in now, he's never been, pressed on it ever. I've kind of failed to believe that, if I'm honest. So that's why it's really shocking to me to see that, because I just don't understand how it's never come out before. And he's got this high by basically lying.
Yeah. I mean, Alex, Elliott has just said that he's basically, got to his position by lying. But some people might say, well, it was his record as a politician that's got him to this position. His experience as a trainee solicitor, which may have been exaggerated as a solicitor, has nothing to do with it. What would you say to that, Alex?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can be a good politician and never have had a career. I don't think. Actually, maybe I take that back. I don't think there are many at all good politicians that have not had real careers. The reality is that the reason why this is a problem, and it is the Legal Services Act of 2007 why this is a problem, because you're not allowed, it's a criminal offence to pretend to be a solicitor and sell your experiences if you're a solicitor. The problem is he's based a lot of his, commentary around his experience as a solicitor, so to speak. And like he said, he even said it in Parliament, which is misleading the House of Commons, which is also against the rules. Now, it's a bigger problem when you are trusted with the country's businesses, so to speak. You are the business secretary, after all. When you're trusted with managing such a important aspect of our country's, success, so to speak, and you've falsified elements of your background and used those false elements of your background in previous parts of Parliament to say, I've done this, therefore you should listen to me, you should take my advice. Well, people will go, no, why should I take the advice of you? You've clearly lied. You've clearly lied on your CV. Now, of course, Jonathan Reynolds is going to make the same excuses that what's her face has done. I can't remember her bloody name for a second. They're Rachel Reeves. Thank you. She's so forgettable. I mean, I think this whole government's, apart from it's all cock-ups, are so forgettable. This is the thing. People cannot trust politicians who have lied so blatantly. And, the worst thing about this is, had he not updated his LinkedIn, people probably wouldn't have known. And why the hell? How stupid are you? How dumb have you got to be at politics while this Rachel Reeves scandal is going on? And people like Guido are clearly watching LinkedIn pages of all the top politicians of the country. Why would you do it? How thick have you got to be? Does he think he's hiding behind the cover of Rachel Reeves and he won't get the scrutiny because she's in the doghouse for it at the moment? It is bonkers to me how thick and how stupid our politicians are in this country and how they think they're going to get away with lying. And then once they're caught lying, to persist with the lie, to persist with it and not just say, do you know what? We've all made mistakes in our lives. Nobody is perfect. To say, do you know what? I made some mistakes. I own up to it. I'm going to rectify those things. Judge me on my performance now. At least own up to your mistakes. People have respect for people who can say, I effed up. I need to do better. And nobody should follow that as an example of what to do. Here's the good things that I'm going to do. None of them do it. It loses massive amounts of trust in British politics, which is already probably at an abysmally low point. I just think this whole Labour government is full of trash. It's just trash. People who have never had real jobs, people who have never lived a day in their life, people who have never really had to struggle that much. And they've pounced off the system. They've pounced off the public purse. They don't give a toss. But they care about public opinion either, frankly. Well, clearly they don't, because they're approval ratings at 68%. Disapproval. Incredible. I mean, I'm lost for words, Chloe, because the whole thing's so baffling to me.
I know, it seems like the scandals just don't stop coming. I mean, it's making our lives easy to find stories, as I mean, there are just more of them than we can even get through.
Honestly, it feels like that. I think I said on Twitter the other day, I was like, it is like this government cannot go a week without a scandal. If it was a business, it would be bankrupted by the amount of refunds. If we could refund a government, this one would go through. I think the only two would go through with Liz Truss's government, and this one, they'd be through the roof with refunds. Unbelievable.
Exactly, and I think people are particularly furious because this is a party that, in the run-up to the general election, painted themselves as these sort of moral saints. They said politics is going to be different. We're the party of change. We are more like you, like normal working people. We're not these sleazy, unaccountable politicians that don't keep to our promises. Again, it's not just stuff like CVs, it's actual lying on their promises that's making people furious. And you mentioned there, Alex, this issue of a lack of humility in the party. So Charlie, let's move on to you. It says here in the Guido article, Number 10 is desperately spinning Jonathan Reynolds' CV embellishment as a mere admin error. So they're unwilling to put their hands up and say, look guys, we messed up. And it's not just on these little scandals that we're seeing a lack of humility. I think you're seeing it in policy as well, because, for example, the farmers' tax. We understand why that was brought in. It's because there are many people who have taken advantage of a loophole where they have purchased land out in the countryside so that they can hand it down inheritance tax free, but they are not actually farmers, right? That's why they brought in the policy. It wasn't well thought through enough. They should have made that policy, they should have amended it to make sure that people who are actual working farmers aren't affected by this. But they haven't got the humility to put their hands up and just say, look guys, we messed this up, we're going to amend the policy because we don't want to accidentally destroy our food security. Same on the winter fuel payments. It's not actually going to save the Treasury that much cash. I think it's estimated 1.5 billion and that may be even less after more of them sign up for pension credit who weren't already on it. They could have, this really damaged their reputation. They could have put their hands up and said, look guys, we messed up, this was a bad idea, we're going to reverse this policy. But still to this day they haven't. They claimed they weren't going to raise taxes on working people. They did, but rather than being honest and saying, look guys, we got it wrong, we thought we weren't going to have to do this, but we've got a different situation than we thought we had before the general election and we're going to have to raise some taxes. They've sort of weaved their way around the definition of a working person to try and make it look like they have kept to their promises. So I mean, Charlie, do you think that the government should start apologising more and start being more humble, or do you think that will make things worse for them? Because they often say if you apologise, the herd just comes for you even harder. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. What do you think the government's approach should be? Should they start apologising for their mess ups, or should they continue trying to hold their line and act as though they haven't done anything wrong?
Well, I try and keep an open mind and try and keep optimistic, but I think I can honestly say that anything that could have gone wrong in the first 6 months of government for this government has gone wrong, and it's a mess of their own making. I think it's probably now too late. Actually, there was an opportunity, a window of opportunity, I think at the budget, funny enough, to say, look, we've said we're going to have to make some tough decisions. We've had to break some promises, but admitting that you're breaking promises by introducing national insurance contributions, having spent the last however many months telling the country we are not going to raise VAT, income tax or national insurance, and then it's there. First impressions absolutely count, and I think the first thing to take away the winter fuel allowance, you might need to act tough, but you don't need to act tough against the most vulnerable. So all of these things that they've decided to do, there's no strategy, there's no coherent plan. And it's the small things, as you say, so even from the CV scandal where they're blaming, as a former advisor, I'm going to stand up for advisors, they're blaming someone else for writing this and saying, it was an admin error of someone in my staff. Well, blame me. You're the politician. It's a public-facing document. How stupid can you be if you think, you would have had to sign that off? You wouldn't leave your CV with your, junior secretary just to put up online for the whole world to see. If you have, well, then that's an error. And if you haven't checked it, then you're incompetent. Problems there. Problems with the farmers' tax. As you say, the whole issue for me is that you've got the government saying this is only going to affect about 500 farms, and 500 of those people that you explained, Chloe, about where there has been a loophole and where people might not have paid tax that they should have. The NFU, the National Farming Union, is saying, no, hang about. This policy affects about 75,000 of us. So, that's such a huge gap between 500 and 75,000. So who is to blame? Who isn't doing their homework? Who is not coming to the table to try and address these problems? And if it is a government fault, then they should be able to say, look, everybody knows what our agenda is. We're trying to get as much money as we can because of those terrible Tories and they wreck the economy. So we have to make tough decisions. We might have got this one wrong. We're looking again at the winter fuel payment. But you can understand my frustrations. You can see what we're trying to do. We've got to trim the fat somewhere. And, for me, it goes back to without going back to the previous story, but where government departments ask for more money, they always ask for more money. The whole focus should be, we should be doing more with less. How can we grow our business? How can we grow our department's achievements with doing it with less money? Because it's taxpayers' money. And if you spend all that money, you then obviously ask for that same amount the year later. Because if you cut your budgets or if you underspend, then the Treasury will say, oh, you don't need that much money, so we won't give you as much next year. That's seen as a failure within Whitehall. That should be seen as an achievement, to say, I've achieved so much, I'm saving the taxpayer money, we're becoming more efficient as a government, more efficient in terms of our public services, more successful as a country. But the mentality isn't there, because you will always have, I'm afraid, with this Labour government, the unions breathing down the back of the neck of the government and the Treasury, to say, you can't cut here, you can't cut my members, and so I fear all the windows of opportunities to change all of these things, to apologise for things, has gone through, has passed, because it will just look as though the Prime Minister's sort of trying to look tough by hanging in there and doubling down, but I think he's lost the will of the people, that old phrase.